In this podcast entitled There's No Place Like Home, I want to explore this concept of home. Not the space that children go to sleep and be with their parents, but a deeper sense of home as meaning belonging, feeling safe and secure, feeling brave, feeling connection and the ability to communicate and feel understood, and the opportunity to understand the others around you, to be included and to include others. I think it's a highly democratic space where every single human that meets in that space is of equal value. We're not equals because we're all different and we have different experiences, but we are of equal value. And by being valued, we create this space that feels like home, where we dare to be our authentic selves together with others, that kind of collective autonomy that I write and talk about. Designing a space that allows children to connect can be one of our priorities in creating this sense of home. That children can connect with others, can connect with ideas, can connect with the stuff that is in the space, but also to make connection and feel that sense of connection too. And I think in spaces that are divided by age, this is something that we need to consider even more, because in homes where we dwell, we are multi-age environments. Yet in the school and education system, we are very often divided into age groups, and therefore we're losing many benefits of connection with new ideas and different abilities, different approaches. But also that safety that comes from being together with your sibling. This is something I think I've noticed deeply because I'm the mother of twins as well as their younger brother, and observing my daughters up until the age of 13, they were together in every class that they went. The strength that they got from that was quite amazing. It allowed them to feel safe, secure and brave, even when the schools were unable to provide that. This was not something afforded to their younger brother, who was in the class alone. He always asked about his twin. Where was that twin? They were 13 roughly when they first started to separate, and that lasted a year the first time, and then they went back into the same class again. And this is in part not just because they needed each other, but because one of them wasn't thriving in a classroom that didn't have any other English first speakers in the class, and therefore could not find belonging there, a sense of connection with the other students. So she moved back into her sister's class and connected with all the other English first language speakers. And they created a group. They had a home there, in a sense, this home found in a language, because they all came from different cultures. Most of them were East Asians and different East Asian countries, but they had their home together in the spoken language. So I think we also need to think about that. How do we connect? How do we create this opportunity for children to use their language and their culture, their identity, to be able to connect with others? Do all children feel they can be their authentic selves together with others, or are they constantly needing to fit in? Because hopefully, in fully functioning homes, as in where we live, you dare to be your full self. Of course, as I mentioned, not all children have that. And if they're having to fit in at home with their parents or guardians, then they need somewhere where they can be themselves. And if we constantly have that in the back of our mind, that what we're doing is more than education, but creating this sense of belonging, this sense of home where children can be themselves. It's not easy. So how do children connect with others in these settings that have each age divided into different classrooms? One way could be windows in a classroom that opened out into the corridors or into the outdoor space where they can communicate through those windows, wave to each other, notice each other. Shared gardens, shared indoor spaces like the square piazza idea in Reggio Emilia, where they can go in there and meet each other, either in small groups from different classrooms at the same time or just as they pass through. There's many ways for this to happen. A lot of spaces use their outdoor spaces for collective meeting. But even there, I have noticed that sometimes there are gates and fences between classrooms outdoors, keeping that space separated too. It's not creating a sense of home in where children can learn from each other. The whole idea of Vygotsky and the zone of proximal development disappears a little bit because children are not able to notice what's going on and the development and use their mirror neurons to understand and practice in their brains before they try it out in reality. Because that leads us into the word brave. How do we design so that children feel brave, that they dare to test things out? Of course, safe and security is one of the ways that we can do for helping children to feel brave. One of the things that I did a long time ago was when we noticed that children were having different ideas about what they were scared of, we started exploring this a little bit further and thinking, what can we do to support them to feel brave or less scared? And the dark was one of these areas that the children felt was very scary. So we created opportunities for the children to play in the dark with different light sources. And the first time we did it, there was so much screaming, but I knew the screaming was part of this process. And some of the children left the room, and we were prepared for that too, because it was too scary. And some of the children left the room because it was too noisy. But we kept doing this on a weekly basis. And I'd taken photographs using a slow aperture so that the light created patterns and drawings. And so when I printed these out, the children could see that they had created various kinds of art. And so they were much more intentional the next time they went into the dark. The second time there was less screaming and less children left. And the third time there was virtually no screaming and all of the children stayed. And we kept doing this and kept adding new things to try. So there was both the familiar, so that it felt comfortable and home-like in that familiarity. But we kept adding the new things as a challenge to test and open up. And after 3 months, I asked them if they were still afraid of the dark. And they all said that they were no longer afraid of the dark because they could play there. Play had opened up this possibility for them to feel brave in a space that had previously been scary. We're all born with lots of fears as a natural way for us to survive. Risky play is a kind of anti-phobic process to help us overcome or master those fears, so that the fears are not controlling us, that we are in control of what we want to do. What our responsibility then is to create spaces where the children can, through play, hazard-free play, practice engaging with things that feel scary. Not too scary, but that little bit of a buzz, that little bit of a thrill, and it's going to be slightly different for every single child. Like, as you noticed when I explained about the dark play, some children left early, and we had ensured that was a possibility. Height was another thing they said was scary, and so we played around with all sorts of different heights and worked also on that social connection and social bravery, that you don't all have to go from the highest, that we can value that someone will jump from the first step, and that was amazing for them, while others could jump from the highest step, and that was only just enough of a thrill for them. But they all looked at each other's attempts at overcoming fears and valued that. Instead of what was measurement in height, they were looking at the measurement of overcoming fear, and that creates a sense of bravery because they support each other in it. It's less scary to do something when you know the others value what you're doing. Philosophy with children has also been another way of creating this sense of home, this sense of bravery and connection and understanding and daring to be ourselves. It's a slow process, and it's not an overnight fix, because it's about supporting children to be able to listen to each other and to be able to think critically and creatively, and to be able to articulate their ideas. And in the beginning, because I started with children who were, the youngest was 2 years old, there's a lot of action, few words, and a lot of language support from those that are facilitating the dialogue. So I'm not leading it, I'm facilitating it. I'm ensuring that the children can dialogue with each other. It was an amazing experience because it's about my agenda being put to the side, or more rightly, my agenda is about the flow. It is not about me teaching them something specific. If I notice during that flow that there is a need for them to learn something, then I will teach that outside of the philosophy session. And that might be through reading a book, exposing them to activities or experiences, going somewhere to visit, playing with words. There's so many different ways that I can provide the opportunity for the children to learn and develop the knowledge that they need to make informed decisions. What I noticed was, over the years of the children doing philosophy with children, the easier it was for them to feel that sense of belonging, that they were a group, they were a community of learners, and within that they had created that sense of home. So it's not just a physical space. We might make changes to the physical space so that the children can see themselves reflected there and feel that belonging, or the design of the space, physical space, gives the children the ability to play the way that they need to. But there's also a need for the cognitive and social emotional space to be addressed for the children to feel that sense of belonging. And philosophy with children has been, I have noticed as I've worked with it, one of the tools that has allowed that to happen. The atelier has also been one of the spaces that I have used to create a sense of belonging. So design for belonging can be the actual physical space, but also the activities that we are offering. So for instance, when I am providing new experiences in the atelier, and in my head, ideally, I think of it as a communal, shared, together activity, I have to think about, will all the children be able to do this together with others when it's something new? So then I will offer the children the opportunity to experience this newness either in pairs or individually, according to what I think is going to support the child the best. So they become familiar with the experience before offering it as a group activity all at once, so that they are familiar with how it works and therefore can have the energy to interact with the materials and each other and negotiate that space. And I think this should be with any materials and any activities that we're doing. We need to consider, do the children in our care need to access these materials by themselves first to become familiar with it so that they can interact with them together with others with a reduced likelihood of problems arising, because there is that familiarity with the materials, that sense of belonging and connectedness with the material that is then not taking energy away from the child. It also gives me, the teacher, the information I need to think about what size group should be doing this. Can 10 children do it all at once, or should I have smaller groups? Do some of the children need more time to do this alone, or maybe with just one other person before I start with the groups? I am watching how they're interacting and thinking about how much time do these children need to be able to interact with confidence, with bravery, and with creativity. It's hard to feel creative if you are not feeling brave. That sense of home can be created outside as well, whether it is just in your immediate outside space that belongs to your setting, or whether you're going out to the forest. What I really enjoyed doing was creating our spaces. So we had various parks that we gave names to ourselves. So the children invented names, often based on either something they had seen there or things that they could do there. So we had the snail park, and the snail park was called that because we'd found so many snails there, and the children were making connections with these snails. They were building relationships with them. So there was a sense of belonging, belonging with the snails, belonging with that space. We can go to the forest regularly, the same little patch of forest. Because what happens if you visit the same space all the time is that we as educators get to know that space. And if we know that space, we will more than likely give children more freedom to explore. Because if we know the space, we know the potential play opportunities, we know all of the risks, we know how far the children can go, we know if there are any real dangers, so we don't have to think about stopping children constantly, because we know there are no dangers in that space, as in genuine dangers. If we don't know the forest, we don't know that information. We don't know what the potential dangers are unless we've gone and checked it, which means we have to keep the children closer. So creating a sense of home in a forest is about feeling that belonging. It comes to this kind of indigenous idea of the forest becomes kin. They become family. You know the forest so well, it becomes reliable in the sense of a family member, loving family member is reliable, but that doesn't mean they're the same all the time. They can still be a little bit unpredictable in that reliability. It's reliable in the sense that we know it, we understand it, we know how to play there. But it's unpredictable because the weather and the seasons are going to offer new things, and we're going to notice stuff, and it's always changing. And therefore, as educators, we can't know exactly what's going on there, but we can be familiar enough to feel safe, secure, and brave. And that's what we need to be doing when we're going on excursions. We, as an educator, we as the adults, this can be with parents too, if we get to know that space well enough, then the children are going to have the freedom to be able to explore it well. I remember observing some children climbing Fox Rock, which is not far away from my little house in the forest. And some of the parents kept shouting, "Be careful, be careful." But I knew exactly what the children were doing based on the sound. I didn't even see them. Based on the sound of what they were doing, I could locate where in that little rock collection they were. I knew, because I'd seen them going in, that they were tall enough to be able to manage that. I knew the area they were in offered no risk. There was another area that was more risky, and if they'd been in that space, then maybe I would have gone over and checked as well. But it was interesting that because I knew the rocks so well, I felt much more comfortable by just being able to listen and not having to see them, because it becomes very hard to play hide and seek if we don't trust the forest or the children, when the whole game goes on the ability to not be seen. So there has to be trust in the forest, that we know it well enough, and trust in the children, and the children also need to trust us to know that when they are hiding, we are not going to leave them. So definitely this sense of home, I think, is something that we should be striving to do in all early years settings, definitely, but also in schools. But I think the aesthetic in schools, the focus is on being school-like. And school-like has become something very sterile when it comes to emotions, when it comes to social interactions, when it comes to the wholeness of being, of connection, of community. It's lacking. And I think if we take the time to think about creating a more home in the sense of belonging, of bravery, of safety and security, of interaction and connection, then I think we are going to create spaces for learning flow. And I definitely want you to think about that more. How do we design a space that feels more like home?